and wine, but they had no taste. Since their breath was whack, but now is that the case? I have a wish to have a mic in my hand. Without that, it's like kryptonite and Superman. So Shaheed come in with the sugar cuts. Wiped off my name, but on stage call me Dynamite. When was the last time you heard the fight was sloppy? Lyrics anonymous, you never hear me copy. Top notch, baby, never coming less. Sky's the limit. You got to believe up the quest. Sit back, relax, get up off the path. Not that, hit the dance floor. Come move the hands. Non-believers, you can check the steps. I run with Shaheed and the brother Abstract. Niggas know the town when questions in the jam. I never let a statue tell me how nice I am. Come up with more hits than the Braves and the Yankees. Living mad black like a oversized gotta be. The wackest fools trying to diss it makes me laugh. When my track record's longer than a DC-20 aircraft. So next time that you think you want something here, make something dope or take that garbage to say elsewhere.
The way that
you are about to hear a strange but true story. Legend has it, Harry Houdini, the master magician, once claimed that he could break out of any jail cell in the world. All he had to do was walk into that jail cell with his street clothes on. I'll be out of there in 1 hour, no problem, he said. Well, a very old jail down south heard about Houdini's claims, and they accepted his challenge. On the day of the event, many people gathered outside. Very confidently, Houdini walked right into the jail and into the cell, and they shut the metal doors behind him. The first thing Houdini did was he took off his coat. Then, very strangely, he took off his belt. Secretly hidden in Houdini's belt was a 10-inch piece of steel, very tough and very flexible. And Houdini started working. In about 30 minutes, that confident expression Houdini had when he walked in disappeared. In 1 hour, he was bathed in sweat. And at the end of 2 hours, Houdini, in defeat, collapsed against the door, which then opened. It opened because, you see, that door had never been locked. But that's not entirely true, is it? That door was locked. It was firmly and thoroughly locked. In Houdini's mind, it was locked as if the best locksmith in the world had put his lock on it. The mind is powerful. How many doors in your life do you think are locked but aren't? How many times have you been stuck in the mental prison of overthinking something that really had a simple solution? There is an ancient African proverb that says, when there is no enemy within, the enemy outside can do us no harm. Your mind is the most powerful force you will ever face. It will tell you lies. It will tell you you can't do that. You're not meant for that. You're not good enough for that. You can't go on anymore. You don't have the energy. You must thank it for its opinion and carry on. Because like Houdini showed us, the only locked doors that exist are in your own mind. The doors in reality are open. And all you have to do is walk through.
Good evening, everyone. Happy Sunday, and welcome to another episode of Cutting Through the Culture. As you can see, we have our Our leader, our fearless leader, Chad O. Jackson, he is celebrating his baby daughter's birthday today. So you're stuck with the three of us. I am hosting tonight. So y'all give me some grace. I'm sweating on the inside. I'm trying to get through this. So Blanche, why don't you tell us what have you been up to this week and what did you think about the clip?
This week I haven't done too much. Just posting some videos. And I thought the clip was awesome. Really, it's about mind over matter, and us actually using the power of our mind. And then also, he didn't even check to see if the cell was even locked. And like to me, that's like just to pay attention to the small things, like the little things, like the detail. It said the devil's in the detail. So that's what I got from that, But I thought it was awesome.
Absolutely. Mr. Chuck, how are you? What have you been up to this week? And what do you think about the clip?
This week, as far as social media goes, I did a live, me and Blanche went for over 3 hours, like 3 hours and a couple minutes. You forgot to mention it, Blanche.
My bad, man. Listen, I forgot. My bad.
No, it's all good, man. I figured I would mention it or, whatever. It's all good. Yeah, on Blanche's YouTube channel, we did the part 2, breaking down Marcus Garvey. That was a good one. I had a real good time with that discussion. It was almost to the point where, like, Blanche could probably attest to this. It was like we didn't even know where to end the discussion. You know what I'm saying? Because it was just so much information, so much heavy stuff being laid out. It was like, yo, it could have kept going, But yeah, so we did a dive into Marcus Garvey, and again from Garvey we branched out and talked about other things as well, other folks and other ideas and those sorts of things that have shaped our country and shaped our world. And I did a live yesterday, quick little impromptu live with Chad about Marxism and race. Chad had been getting some pushback, with some of his recent posts on Instagram from people making comments saying, you have Marxism all wrong. Marxism is an economic theory. It has nothing to do with race. So he and I just took it upon ourselves to tackle that subject real quick. And we went for about an hour and 40 minutes or so. But, even with that, we still could have. We didn't even really take the whole edifice down. We just sort of took a huge chunk out of it. But, we just don't need to tackle that. So, yeah, so I was with Blanche on Friday and I was with Chad yesterday. So y'all go check those videos out too if you haven't seen them already.
I'm just saying, no, ain't nobody called me. Nobody called me to talk about Marxism, communism.
Listen,
it's
I'm not the governor of a state. You ain't got time for small dudes like me.
So
I'm sitting here in my bedroom chilling. Yeah, I'm nobody, you ain't got time for us.
Stop it. So yeah, I interviewed Governor DeSantis on Monday. It aired on Thursday. If you guys have a moment, go check it out. It's pretty interesting. He talks about, if you haven't watched him, he talks about a lesson that he learned when he was a young man. And I think it's very interesting. I'm going to clip that, put it up. I just haven't had a chance to do it yet. But if you have not seen it, please go watch it. I think it's a really good interview. I think it shows a different side of him that you haven't seen. But I thought the clip was really indicative of what is happening in culture, what is happening in pretty much everything. What's that saying? It's like, it says that we are born by our parents' decisions, but we die by our looking like our own decisions. And so as we discuss this week's topic, the psychosis, your mind, the thoughts that you allow to come into your mind, you are going to create your reality. You know, the Bible says that be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Jesus talks a lot about your mind. The Bible talks a lot about your mind and how you can, you know, what the thoughts that you let into your mind, what it can create in your life. Everything is created by a thought. And so I wanted to dive into that. I'm really big on that because it's true. You know, you can literally, have you guys ever like been working on something or had an idea about something or you know, had something coming up, and in your head you have built up like this whole big thing, and then when it actually happens, you're like, wasn't even all that. Like it wasn't even like I made this thing, this whole thing. It's all in your head, and then when it actually happens, you're looking back at yourself like that was light work. Blanche, you ever been through that?
Probably that's like 99.9% of the time. You know, with everything we do. I think I learned in my life, like the Bible says, you know, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. And so I find in my life where I found that when I've been willing to do it, it's never as bad as I thought it was going to be. And I think to me, the willingness to do something puts you in line with your spirit, puts you in line with God. And so that's what I've learned. And I think most people psych themselves out and they're unwilling to do it because they say, I don't even want to put my best foot forward. I just feel like every time I say, you know what, I'm gonna just cast my lots and just go ahead and just do it. And then somehow it works out. So that happens about 99.9% of the time. I might just say 100.
Yeah. How about you, Chuck?
Same here. Same in your case too, Keisha. Tonight, you know, Keisha was bugging out guys. You know, she was like, "Oh man, moderating. You know, how we gonna do it without Chad?" But she gonna see. It's gonna be. It ain't gonna be that big of a deal. We gonna make it through.
You
Yeah.
would make me eat my own words. I literally just said that.
You literally just said that. That's why I started laughing. I started smiling when you posed that question. I'm like, you should take your own advice.
I know. I didn't even think about that. That's so funny. That's hilarious. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, absolutely. I didn't even mention like when we did our openings about my thoughts about the Houdini clip. I mean, I was kind of like, whoa, I was kind of taken aback for a second because I'm like, is there some type of, are there more technical difficulties happening? Like, is this the opening clip we're going with? Like, I wasn't sure exactly what was going on, but yeah, it's funny too, because I know a lot of you are probably familiar with the famous book written by James Allen, As a Man Thinketh. It's funny, I have a copy. It's like I have a copy of dang near everything. I'll be throwing these books out here. And yeah, As a Man Thinketh. I have it around here somewhere in the house. But anyway, yeah, and you know, it's like how does one recognize you know that he is, right? What substantiates a person's being, right? And then that's where we get the famous quote from Rene Descartes, which is, I think, therefore I am. You know, if I can think, I am. You know, and so to be conscious is to, you know, recognize one's ability to, I guess, engage in thought. Not an expert on Rene Descartes. I've studied him a tad bit, but anyway, but yeah, absolutely. I think that's I mean, that's just life. You know what I mean? And I think too, you know, if you accept from the outset that you know, life is hard and that you're going to have disappointments, you know, it'll better prepare you when you just accept that fact and accept that reality. And I think that, you know, as we go on with the show and Keisha has some clips she wants to share with us, I think a lot of people who are struggling, you know, and they sort of use their own sort of psychological issues, and they find and they try and, I guess, deal with those psychological issues in the political space, then we start to have a lot of issues, because a lot of the times what you're seeing with a lot of these folks are really just, people with severe mental hangups. And it may not even be something necessarily clinical. They just need to, again,
I don't know.
No, but what I'm saying is, like, some folk, actually have like legitimate. Yeah, I pulled up the definitions too, because a lot of people use the term psychosis and psychopathy. They use those terms interchangeably.
Mm-hmm.
So to be to be psychotic or to be a psychopath, those are technically two different things. Someone who suffers from psychosis, I just pulled up a basic Oxford definition, is someone with a severe mental condition in which thought and emotions are so affected that contact is lost with external reality. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times, you got folks, who pushing, and I know like politics and culture are some of the things that we tackle, more so here than say, mental, but or psychology or whatever. But this is what we're dealing with a lot of times when we're talking about politics. It seems as though we're talking about people who are completely detached from external reality. And so I think the term psychosis, even if you want to say, well, we're just using that term figuratively, I think it applies. I really do,
That's exactly why I wanted to talk about this, because when we look at, and some of the clips that I'm going to show you, like, literally exacerbate this idea, because you hear these people, most of the people who are talking about, like the Al Sharptons, Jesse Jacksons, Ibram X. Kendi, Robin DeAngelo. I mean, literally probably every single person that we can talk about that is a figurehead in who are pushing these ideas of oppression and white privilege and all of these things in society. They're doing very well. And so it's bizarre that they claim that, Black people cannot succeed because of this white supremacist ideology, but yet they're successful. It's like, who are you? Where you living? What you doing? It's weird. It's like, I feel like they're in some type of psychosis. I feel like they're in honestly, I feel like they're in a delusion. They have a fixed false belief, because a delusion is a fixed false belief in something that is not real. They are fixed in this belief. It is false and it is not real. So their own reality betrays their thoughts, but they don't seem to make that connection. Blanche, what do you say?
Well, first, let me say that with that first clip with the guy in the jail talking about Houdini, I thought it was going to be woke. So I thought they were going to say that the white man tried to get even the white Houdini couldn't break out of the prison. So I don't know. I thought it was going to be like woke, and it shocked me that it wasn't woke. So I was happy that it was actually something that was thoughtful. I think that a lot of these people, these folks know this stuff is BS. The people that you're talking about, they know it's BS. Even to what Chuck said about these folks saying that Marxism is an economic theory. My question is, then why would BLM say they were trained Marxists? What are you trained in economics? That's foolish. But again, when people hear the truth, they have to justify. It's kind of like you got to justify the wrong. So you justify the wrong by saying, I'm not oppressed, but Black people are oppressed. So even though I made it out of the situation, even though I'm successful, even though it doesn't, but most of us aren't. So they make themselves the anomaly, like they slipped through the cracks. They somehow, the white man was asleep one day. They snuck in and got the job and wrote the book and got to be a professor at a university. Then
They
the white man
literally
woke.
say this.
I
Roland
know.
Martin said this on a show recently. He literally said this, Blanche.
I just heard Tariq Nasheed say, Jesse Lee Peterson kept asking him, "Are you oppressed today, right now?" He said, "I can be." He said, "I'm talking about." He said, "Are you oppressed?" He said, "I can be." I'm just like, what? Like, so again, these people know this stuff. I promise they do.
Oh
I
yeah, it's a
promise they do.
hustle for sure.
It's the hustle.
Yeah, the governor, he went in. He was like, "It's a grift, Keisha." He said it. He was like, "This is a grift." I couldn't be, because that's kind of not politically correct. I was surprised that he said that. He was like, "It's a grift." I was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah,
But
because
he told the truth. Everybody, the people on, regular everyday people, some know, some don't know. Most don't know.
They don't know.
But the people, I agree with you. The people at the top, they know this is a grift. You cannot say that you think that America as a whole is intrinsically racist. Everything is racist. You can't, there's no way for you to succeed. But if you want me to come and speak, I'm sorry, that's going to be $30,000 and I'm against capitalism. Yo, listen, I just had a knockdown, drag out debate with a guy who's like, he claims he's an independent. He's like trying to, I agree with some of the things you say, Keisha, but I just don't agree with this. He said, this, I'm quoting, I'm paraphrasing, but it's basically a quote. He said, "Remember in Tulsa when Black people were doing, all of these businesses that Black people had, and Black people were doing all this stuff." And then he said, "Capitalism is bad." Whoa, now. You can't have it both ways. Either you liked what was happening in Tulsa and all the other hundreds of successful Black communities, or you don't, because that was a free market system. And little by little, he's on the verge of changing his mind. Chuck, what do you think about this? This is right up your alley.
the thing is, these folks who use the term capitalism, they don't know what it is. You ask them, who are these folks? When you talk about capitalism, a lot of folks like to go to men like Adam Smith, and rightfully so. With his book, the Wealth of Nations. You have, like, say, Adam Smith, and then you have Edmund Burke, and Edmund Burke and Adam Smith are sort of seen as the twin pillars of modern day conservatism. But from my understanding, a lot of Adam Smith's ideas and theories were borrowed from a group of French economists that refer to themselves as the physiocrats. Don't know off the top of my head exactly what that word means or how it would translate into English, but the physiocrats were a huge influence on Adam Smith, just to give some background and some context. But, when you start talking about capitalism, many people today have a very skewed, a very dim-witted, perception or conception of what capitalism is, because they're getting their understanding of the free market system from Marx and Engels. This is where they're getting these ideas from. And they don't really know, they have no idea what it is. They have no idea what it actually means. So, and it's funny because that's why most people say the types of things that they say. It kind of brings me to something that Chad and I spoke about last night, is that people have been convinced by the left that, for example, we talked about slavery and how slavery was an institution that was predicated upon capitalism because, slavery was a business model. And so, slavery is an example of capitalism, and nothing could be further from the truth, because capitalism, or the free market system, is the only economic system that is in line with our principle, or with the principle of natural rights. And this is why slavery was not long for the world, particularly in the West, given the fact that human beings being considered property is not in keeping with the very concept of natural rights. And within the concept of natural rights lie the very concept of free market capitalism as well. Very simple. And so slavery had nothing at all to do with capitalism. Capitalism can be used as a defense for not slavery, but for abolition. You're right. It's the complete opposite, because slavery was, socialism. As a matter of fact, and our friend Chad, of course, posted a reel on his IG page making this point. And to his credit, Dinesh D'Souza, I heard Dinesh D'Souza make this point years ago, that slavery in the American South was socialism, pretty much. And what you have today, in our inner cities and our barrios and on the Native American reservations, you have a modern day form of slavery, or what we can easily call a kind of petty socialism. They took the plantation politics, and you hear folks say, well, get off the Democrat plantation, get off the plantation. And that's exactly what government dependence is. It was slavery under another name. And that's the exact same thing that you had in the American South. So part of the problem is that most folks, they just do not, quite frankly, they do not know, they do not understand and recognize what capitalism is economically, and they do not understand how capitalism lines up symmetrically with Christian ethics, morals, values, and principles. This is why, going back to Adam Smith, and I'm gonna pass it off, going back to Adam Smith, this is why Adam Smith is most known for, of course, The Wealth of Nations, and the companion piece to The Wealth of Nations, which I believe he wrote first, which was, of course, Moral Sentiments. His understanding of economics came out of his philosophy of morals. And so a lot of people just don't know what capitalism is, quite frankly. They think capitalism is what Marx said it was, which is exploitation and all this other garbage. And that's just not true.
Isn't that crazy how Karl Marx, who failed, like his ideas failed, they literally failed. But they're still being talked about and trying to be implemented today. Blanche, can you give the people a definition of what free market I hate to say capitalism, because capitalism is Marxist words, but what is a free market system? Can you help people understand what exactly is that?
To me, you see the guy, I don't know if y'all have it, but with the Spanish guys pushing that ice cream cart with the bells on it.
It's the commercial?
No, it's not. It's like in real life. It's like where when it gets warmer, the little, like where I'm from is like Mexicans. They got them out here too, where they push the little ice cream cart, and they go from business to business to business, and they sell all the ice cream. They go wherever they go, re-up, come back, and basically they make as much money as they want to make. They fit a need because it's hot outside. I just feel like, to me, it's a person's opportunity to enrich themselves financially, not being hindered, meaning that long as it's legal, that person should be able to make the money they want to make. If they don't want to work, they don't have to. If they do, they do. But at the same time, under another system, that same ice cream the guy, I don't want to call him ice cream pusher, but the guy that sells the ice cream, he would have to pay the government. in a sense. He would be working for the government selling ice cream. And then, so they would only pay him, they wouldn't pay him for walking all those miles every day. They wouldn't pay him for possibly even making the ice cream himself. But I just feel like it's the way, a person's way to enrich themselves in this market, like the freedom to financially enrich myself. So if I want to sell whatever I want to sell, make a product, or just work for somebody, I have those options. I just think that these other systems not going to be like that. They're going to make you work for the government, and then you're going to have to get a fixed wage. And we already talked about the doctor and the cab driver making the same amount of money, which is insane. But just free market. There's no cap on the money I can make, basically, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's the free exchange of value. So if I have bread and you have gold, and you say that you'll give me a piece of that gold for my bread, it's an exchange of value, basically. And both people, this is the beautiful thing about capital, or about the free market system, is that both people have to agree upon the exchange. So if I am trying to sell you a piece of bread for a bar of gold, I don't know anybody who's going to say that that's an equal exchange, and I would go out of business. That's why a lot of people say that the free market system is the most altruistic system that you can have in this world, because it's like, if you don't think that what I'm selling my goods for is of reasonable value, you can say no. And you can go to somebody else down the block and be like, yo, I think I'm going to get it from that guy. I mean, and there's many different models that this can come in, but for me to be able to sell, even like going for work, that's why the minimum wage is such a, you want to talk about systemic racism. The minimum wage is one of the most racist. It's not racist today, but it came from racism. Like, there were white people who wanted to keep Black people out of the market, because guess what? Those slaves, those people that was doing that, they had skills that other people did not have. And they were trying to figure out a way to, how do we keep them out of the market? And so that's where it's funny that the people who claim to be against slave racism are pushing for one of the most racist policies, which is the minimum wage. Because if I say I want to work for $2 an hour, what is it to you? What is it to you? If I want to work for $2 an hour, it's better than $0 an hour. But now you have the government creating a price for labor. People don't understand that the economics of this stuff, this is real. They put so many young Black men and women out of work because they wanted to set the price of labor at a certain amount. We still have it today. Minimum wage. What is minimum wage? $7.25. I don't know, $7.25, whatever it is. But the government setting the price of what you want to work for. What if that's you learning that skill, you getting that experience of customer service, you entering into the market of work and labor, you're learning valuable skills that maybe you won't get anywhere else. There's so many instances, people's lives are so different, but for the government to come in, and then you have these so-called, the left who claims to be, for the people, they're saying, no, we're going to make this company set a price at what they have to hire people for. Dr. Walter Williams, he did a really great documentary about the minimum wage, and he interviewed a shop owner in, I want to say it was Harlem. It was in an inner city, and he was like, when the minimum wage came in, this is a Black guy. He's like, I had to let go of all these young kids. He was like, I wish I could bring them in and let them work, because if they're working, they're not doing other stuff. They're not mindlessly roaming around the streets and just, getting into nonsense. He's like, even if they could come in and sweep the floor, but he could pay them whatever he could pay them. But when the government came in and said, no, you have to pay them, I don't know, $5 an hour, maybe that was too much that his shop could bear. So he couldn't afford to pay them. So he had to let them go. And so, even like the movie theater, like people, I remember Thomas Sowell, he was talking about this, where he was like, there used to be people that would show you to your seats in the movie theater. Like, I don't even know about that. Like, I've never seen that, but
the theater ushers,
Right, the theater ushers, the elevator, the man on the elevator that would greet you, press the button for you, the doorman.
But this is the ushering in of socialism, which leads to communism, which the government sets the price on these things. And it's so irritating, frustrating, that we have all these people who talk about wealth disparity and systemic racism and all of this stuff. And here you go pushing a system that totally keeps young people, black, like whatever color people, they keep them out of learning skills. It is a skill to have customer service. You need, even if you want to have your own business, which obviously I push for people having their own business. If you want to have your own business, you need customer service. These are the groundworks. These are the foundations of what young people need to be able to build, to stack on that skill level. You stack your skills to be able to provide a value to the marketplace. And I'm ranting. Go ahead, Chuck.
When I think about, you brought up Walter Williams, one thing Walter Williams harps on often is the Davis-Bacon Act. The Davis-Bacon Act. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and so anybody's interested in looking up the Davis-Bacon Act, it's its effects, the consequences of it, why the regulation or why the law was implemented or statute was implemented. It's a good place to start. But just like you said about the federal government, labor has a price. I can't remember which thinker, may have even been Adam Smith, who said that labor was the first commodity. Labor was the first thing to actually have a price. And when the federal government, artificially sets the price, what that does is that creates a surplus. And when you have a surplus in any given commodity, it causes the value to go down. When you have government agencies, and all you have to do is look at a place like the Soviet Union. When you talk about economics, when you're talking about an economy, only thing an economy or the definition of an economy is how we can as human beings just sort of interacting and commingling amongst ourselves. We are triggered, pardon the word, triggered by prices, so that we know where to disperse certain resources to confront a demand in the market. When a agency comes into play and dictates price or sets a price, the price does not always equate to its actual value. And so, if you looked at the Soviet Union, and you had these, in China too, in the beginning with Mao and the Great Leap Forward and everything, you had these great massive surplus of foodstuffs and rotting goods, foods, and so on and so forth. You had all sorts of things going on when they came in and tried to artificially set prices. And another thing too to consider, this is part of the reason, this is what led to the skyrocketing housing costs and throughout the entire state of California, but especially, say, for example, in the Bay Area, or you had the similar issues in New York. You still have these sorts of things going on in New York with these rent controls and these various things. When and of course, the impetus for all of these policy measures was social justice. When it's not fair. Everyone should be able to afford X, Y, and Z. The problem is that when you decrease the value of something, it does not create more of it. What you have, in fact, done is you have created an artificial scarcity, and based upon prices, and you make innovation and creation, too punitive. You take away, individuals, opportunity to at least have some sort of housing, uh, you know, of some sort, housing of some sort, so that way they're not, on the streets. For example, again, like prior to a lot of these housing regulations and rent control measures that were taken in New York City, folks would, in order to afford, the rent or whatever, you had to get a roommate, or you had to, I mean, again, not just New York City, but anywhere for that matter. You had 2 and 3 people, living together in some way, somehow, they made it work. When you decrease, or when you, again, yeah, that's what I'm saying. When you decrease and you say, okay, well, we have to cap the rent here, and maybe you give, federal subsidies or state subsidies to certain, to landlords so they can pay lenders and so on and so forth. Instead of 2 and 3 people sharing a common space, you had one person say, well, now that I can afford the rent on my own, I don't want a roommate. And what happens then? You've created scarcity because people aren't sharing anymore. They want apartments all their own. And so now you have people that are finding it more and more difficult to find housing because all the housing has been, uh, occupied, and it's tough to find housing because you've created, again, an artificial scarcity. And so this is what you had, and it's funny because, once again, I like to give you guys a little history. I brought up the Soviet Union, early on, when Lenin tried to implement these communist policies, they were, in fact, a disaster. In the early years of the Soviet Union, I think upwards of between 25 and 30 million Russians died of starvation. And this was after World War One, when the Soviets lost, I think it was approximately 18 million of its citizens fighting World War One, and they lost more Russians simply as a result of famine and starvation, thanks to these
18
communist policies.
million?
The Russians, see, I know this is a total side issue, but what really made Russia ripe for the picking when it came to Marxism, bear in mind that Marxism was in Russia as far back as the 1860s.
Right.
The Russian authorities had been trying to keep the revolution down for decades upon decades, because Marxism. And I brought this up on Chad's show last night, that Marxist theories were brought into Russia by a communist by the name of Michael Bakunin, who was actually an associate of Karl Marx, but Karl Marx betrayed him, so to speak, by accusing Michael Bakunin of trying to betray him. But Bakunin never abandoned the faith. He stayed loyal to Marx, even though Marx abandoned him. And it was Michael Bakunin who brought Marxism into Russia in the 1860s. And this culminated in the assassination of Tsar Alexander, and I believe it was 1881. But Russia was fighting a war with Japan. You had the Sino-Russia War, and then you had World War One, and then you had so Russia. It was just this long 30, 40-year stretch where they were constantly at war, and this put a very big economic strain and political strain on the people in their morale. I mean, they were just broken. They were just a broken people, and they were looking for change. And Tsar Nicholas II, who was the last Tsar of Russia, he was so weak and so feckless a leader, that, you know, everything just really pretty much went off the edge with him. But going back to this whole thing, we're talking about economics. You know, Lenin quickly abolished, he abandoned his plan, and he implemented what became known as the NEP, which simply stood for New Economic Policy. So under Lenin, Russia began to flourish, believe it or not, because Lenin abandoned, he said, nah, this ain't working.
Wow.
And he abandoned it, and he came up with what was called the NEP. Shortly after that, of course, Lenin would get sick, and he got a stroke and whatever, and he died. And you know, he famously warned, you know, his close confidants that Joseph Stalin guy, whatever you do not let him take over. Do not let him get in charge. And well, we know how that turned out. And Stalin said, nah, screw the NEP. He scrapped the NEP, and he went back to, you know, full-fledged communism. And the only thing that saved the Soviet Union was World War II and America's Lend-Lease program, when we helped rebuild the Soviet Union during World War II in order to push back the Germans, because the Germans were only about 60 miles outside of Moscow. But the Lend-Lease program was only meant to help aid Russia for military purposes. But we were sending them everything from weapons, guns, to freaking, Playboy magazines. We were sending them everything. And why is that? Because a lot of Soviet spies at the State Department were smuggling these items and smuggling America's nuclear secrets and so on and so forth to the Russians. We helped rebuild Russia during World War II, and that's what saved Stalin's political career. Anyway, I know I'm long, but I'm gonna get off here. But yeah, these things don't work. And Lenin knew they didn't work. He abandoned them. Mao knew that they didn't work. When the Great Leap Forward failed, he abandoned them, and that's when he went into hiding somewhat. And then that's when he reemerged with this new form of Marxism that was, you know, aimed solely at the culture. He said the reason why his Great Leap Forward and all those things failed because China needed to get rid of the four O's. And so, like Keisha just said, it was thought reform. But anyway,
but he's still like it's like Antonio Gramsci. You know, everybody knew that Marxism's ideas didn't work, but they were like, "But no, let's just think of a better way. We're gonna do cultural Marxism. Like we're not gonna do the economic stuff. We're gonna do the cultural Marxism." So I'm gonna let Blanche jump in here with his thoughts before we jump into this next clip that's going to really burn y'all's butter.
Well, I think I laid it off. I went first, and then Chuck went straight.
Hold on, but before you move into the clip, I just wanted to also make this point, because y'all know I'm so scatterbrained. Just before we move on, because we're talking about markets, and that's the whole point that I wanted to make, was that we, as individuals within the private sector, we can either determine, right, prices. We can coordinate the market, right, vis-a-vis a price system that is driven by the concept of supply and demand, or we can have a system of bureaucrats planning our economy as they see fit. There are only two ways to go about it. This is why these folks kill me, you know, these leftists of various stripes, because they blame capitalism for everything. They blame capitalism on racism. They say capitalism is, you know, a transphobia due to capitalism. Everything is the fault of capitalism. And so they want to use whatever pretense they can to give more power and authority to the government. And now that Marxism has expanded beyond economics, it isn't just about setting prices in the market anymore. It's about controlling any and everything, you know, but it's all about giving more power to the state. But anyway.
It's so true. And just really quick, when just so you guys can get an idea of what this thing kind of looks like most of these people have never done any business themselves. These are all just theories in their head that they have never actually tested out into a real world. And so when you have someone who has never owned a business, when you have someone who's never even looked at what this looks like in the real world, it's always an awakening for them. So, and like you have people like AOC touts all the time how capitalism is bad, but she will sell you a $48 t-shirt. Her dress that she wore to the Met Gala a couple of years ago that said tax the rich was tens of thousands of dollars. These people participate and like the free market system, but do not bridge. They don't make the connection that what they're participating in, how they're able to have their fancy little iPhone and drive their little Tesla cars or their Priuses or whatever car they want to drive, is a privilege of the free market system. Bernie Sanders was like, why do we need so many deodorants? You just like, why do you need to have so many? You can just have this is him. He's like, let the government just basically give you two deodorants. Like this is I'm like, this is what these people think. Bernie Sanders, same guy who said there's nothing wrong with bread lines, because that's what you get when the government is setting the price. When the government says, the planners, like Chuck mentioned, the planners of these things, they're going to have their bright ideas, who have never actually ventured into any type of business, any type of free market. Their bright ideas say, well, we're only going to have like one type of bread. We're only going to have one bread company that the government will control. And so what if you have to wait in a bread line because we're making the bread in the back because we don't have enough to feed everybody. And so, these ideas they're very dangerous. So
it's funny because in the beginning, they thought that, capitalism wouldn't produce enough. Now capitalism is producing too much. So now they've done a complete about face. And now we have too much abundance. So, you make it make sense,
Right. All right. Let's see here.
I saw last week a white sociologist gave an analogy that I think makes it easy to understand what white privilege is. And what she said is, white privilege is swimming in a stream, and you're swimming in the direction that the stream is going. You're swimming along with the current. It doesn't mean that you're not working hard. It doesn't mean that you're not struggling, but you're swimming along in the current. And that the Black experience is working hard and swimming against the current. That we're having to paddle harder, we're having to work harder, and oftentimes we're being pushed back by that current. So it's not that no poor white person exists. It's not that white people have never struggled, but they are struggling in a system that is built to move them forward. We are struggling in a system that is built to push us back.
I'm excited to give you an...
Yeah, so I saw last...
All right, you guys. So did you guys hear that? Do you need to hear it again?
No, I heard it, man.
Go ahead, Blanche. What do you think?
Well, the reason why that Black folks are going against the stream is because they can't swim. And
true that.
So she forgot to put that in there, that Black folks can't swim. They give these analogies that make you think this stuff is true. So if they give you a practical analogy, and again, it goes back to the storytelling to make something valid. First of all, everybody has a different experience based on their mindset. What they're saying is that everybody shares the same experience, and it's just not true. There are some Black people that are lazy and some that are ambitious, some that are smart, some that are not so smart, some that want to work hard and some that don't want to work hard, some that want to build, some want to destroy. Like, there's so much nuance in an individual. They almost even give you a communistic view of Black people. They say that all Black people respond to adversity the same way. So if you put a white person in a stream and the stream is going this way, the Black person, when you drop them in the stream, they automatically have to go the other way and swim against the current. like to me, it's just foolish. And this stuff really just sounds good, but it's just not true. If I go to my own life, the times I failed in life were the times I didn't give 110%. When I didn't give 100%, that's when I failed. It had nothing to do with white people, nothing to do with white supremacy, nothing to do with racism. When I decided that I wanted to do something and be successful, that's when things changed. And I think what they're telling black people is that no matter what you do, no matter how hard you try, no matter how smart you are, no matter how hard you work, no matter any of that, you're still going to be a victim of white supremacy. But what that actually does is tell black people to not try. And so now when they jump in the stream, now they jump in the stream, they're saying, give me a life jacket. I need a life jacket. I need an inner tube. I need the little booties. I need all these things to help me not swim, just float. They're talking about just to float. So again, this stuff just sounds good in theory, but it's BS.
But Blanche, okay, why do you think that there are so many Black people in particular that when they hear this stuff in their mind, they don't think like, wait a minute, like that doesn't make sense. Like you said, when you look at your own life, every time, because I feel like that too. Like when like what we said when we opened at the top of the show, we were like, the things that we put in our mind, it was from our own thoughts. It was from our own barriers that we put on ourselves. Like, how come that thing doesn't click in for some people to say, like, when they hear it, that the correction doesn't come? Like, why do you think, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, what is the other side to that, the pushback?
Well, I think because the Black experience is based heavily on emotion, and it's based on narrative, and it's based on, so it's not actually something that's real. So a person isn't comparing their experience with reality or with something that's sensible. They're comparing it to a feeling. How does what she's saying make me feel? How does it make me feel? So really it's an emotional response, not an intelligent one. If you remove the emotions, I think most Black folks say this is BS. But the emotional attachment to, because think about it, these people always get on these podiums and they bring up slavery, they bring up police brutality, they bring up things that draw a emotional response from Black people. So that really cuts off the critical thinking. And so we can see it because we're not emotional about the information we're receiving. We're actually very objective about it. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? We're kind of, we're neutral about it. We're like, okay, does this make sense? How does this, we're actually analyzing the information that we're getting. Most Black people, when they hear any information that's dealing with race, there is no filter. It's true. So if they said, do you know that Black people, when they used to go to the store and try to buy some bread, they used to charge them $100 for bread. Like they just say this stuff and people be like, oh my goodness, $100 for bread. And that stuff goes viral. But guess what? It's just an emotional attachment. My grandparents never, my grandfather dropped out of school in the 4th grade. The 4th grade, he never talked about systemic racism. He never talked about the white 4th grade education. He never talked about none of this other stuff. I'm like, how? And when I was a kid, I was saying, how did you go from the 4th grade to what I see today? But again, it's his mindset. It's just his mindset. So my belief is that what they're trying to do is get all the Black people to think like they're one person. To me, that's their goal, to get Black folks to be one person. So if it happens to Keisha, it happens to Blanche and Chuck. You know what I'm saying? So to me, that's their whole goal when it comes to this narrative, rhetoric, what do you want to call it?
Yeah. Chuck, what do you have to say?
First thing I think of when I hear stuff like that, it's sort of like what Blanche said. I'll just say it in a slightly different way. It's Pavlovian conditioning. I don't know if you all are familiar with Ivan Pavlov. Had this famous experiment with the dogs and the bell. And he trained the dogs to begin salivating whenever they heard a bell, so they would automatically think that food was coming. Y'all know who Pavlov is. You go, any type of psychological study, he's one of those guys that you run across. It's also referred to as classical conditioning. And that's you have, when it comes to a lot of black folk, it's like Blanche just said, they want to get you in a particular state of mind by exposing you to a certain kind of stimuli. That's why they talk about, racism. They give you images or tell you stories. And that is a huge part of what, this kind of racial Marxism or this critical racial theory is all about. And they'll straight up tell you that it's all about narrative weaving and storytelling. And it's about getting you to not so much think your way through, which I think they call that operant conditioning or operating conditioning or something like that, wherein the person takes an active role in the process, right? They become a subject within the process, as opposed to this unwitting, unconscious thing that's just sort of going with the flow as their, I guess, senses are being triggered. But they want to strip away any sort of context to get you into. I'll give you an example. Like, we talk about this issue of police brutality, for example, right? And Blanche says it all the time. One of Blanche's buzzwords, one of his big words is context, 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 context. Black folks have a hard time dealing with context. Mm-hmm. Same deal with this guy who was, one of the most recent kind of racial incident that led to all this outrage, so to speak, or so-called outrage when this guy was killed on this train. They don't want you to think about the details as they pertain to this specific event. They want you to think about, your ancestors being lynched, or, coming over on the slave ship, or images of Rodney King being, whatever it is. And so whenever you are, whenever you're being presented with a situation such as that one, you begin to salivate like Pavlov's dogs.
Can you just kind of give a brief overview of what Pavlov did with the dogs, just for people who may not know?
Yeah. So I believe I'm kind of going off memory here. I think that he trained dog, or he kind of understood that, I guess, made the connection between, I guess, like biological stimuli and this sort of psychological effect. Mm-hmm. And, he was able to pretty much like predict animal behavior, but he would repetitively present them with, so he would ring a bell and then he would feed them. You guys can help me out in the comment section if I'm getting it off a little bit, or, if you know more about Pavlov, feel free to share it with the chat. He would ring his bell and he would feed the dogs, and read the bell, feed the dog. He kept doing this over and over again. And, he wanted to see how they would respond, physiologically to the sound of that bell. And then he got to the point where he would ring the bell and he wouldn't feed them. He would ring the bell and he wouldn't feed them. And so there was no food. But even though there was no food, and we as human beings, we're sort of like that. We smell something, we get hungry, we start salivating or whatever, thirst, whatever it may be. And so, we as human beings, we're tipped off in that way, our senses, and then Pavlov, he would ring the bell and then he would feed the dogs, but yet and still, they would still begin to sound. So he conditioned them to expect to be fed when they heard bells.
Yeah.
And so,
isn't that crazy? That's what it is. You get that's exactly right. And the dogs would literally like you were saying, salivate. They would literally, the expectation, their minds would be so much in the expectation of the food that it was almost like that they could taste it, that they would begin to salivate. And that's why the Bible talks so much about guarding your mind, what you put into your mind, because the enemy can put thoughts, can have you think thoughts that are not yours. Yeah. Or can make you believe or sow seeds of doubt. Like we can, so much of everything that we deal with today happened in the garden. So when the enemy said to Eve, he was like, she was like, God did not say that we or God said that we can have every tree. Like literally, God was giving them complete and total abundance. You can have every tree and eat freely. Like, oh, what? Go ahead.
No. I was just saying, but except that one.
Except the one. But
that one.
That was in the midst. So that means you had to even go through all of the trees, all the orange trees, the apple trees, the almond, like every single tree, all of the goodness that God was giving you, you had to go because this one was in the midst. You had to go through all of the abundance to get to the one that had lack. And then the fascinating thing about this is that the enemy could convince them, speaking into her mind, that I'm going to give you something that you don't have, but she already had what she thought the devil was giving her. It's so crazy.
one more point, Keisha. Are you finished? Go ahead. I don't know.
Go ahead.
Okay, that's one more point before. I don't know if we're gonna move on from here. If you got another clip, but I just wanted to just briefly. I'm just pulling straight from a text I have here. Just quickly, briefly outlining W.E.B. Du Bois' theory of double consciousness, because it reminds me exactly of what she was saying. I forgot the 1619 lady. I forgot her name.
Nicole Hannah Jones.
Nicole Hannah Jones. Yeah, Nicole Hannah Jones. So this is W.E.B. Du Bois. His concept of double consciousness, just kind of neatly packaged. It says all structural oppression must be occupied by cultural suppression. There are several mechanisms of cultural suppression. Denial of history. So if the 1619, you gotta teach that, because that's denying history, right? If you don't teach it, that's what they say. You don't want CRT, you're denying history. So that's suppressing culture. Controlling representation, right? And the use of stereotypes and default assumptions. So all Black people are criminals and baby mamas and baby daddies and this and this and that, right? Okay. So, you just want to just completely bypass all of that because, we don't want to deal with negative stigmas or shaming or anything of that sort. As a result of cultural suppression, minorities, W.E.B. Du Bois believe, develop what he calls a double consciousness. They are aware of themselves from their group's point of view, which is positive. And they are conscious of their identity from the oppressor's point of view, which is negative. They are aware of themselves as Black, in the case of African Americans, and they are aware of themselves as American, two potentially opposing viewpoints. Now, the reason why I felt that necessary, and I thought it was apt to bring this up, is because when you listen to people like Nicole Hannah Jones and others who are, sort of, we talk about Black culture. What does it mean to be Black, and how being Black is not a physical description. It's a culture more than it is anything else, right? And so therein lies the problem. She's talking about whites swimming against the current and Blacks swimming against the stream. So I guess we're the salmon and everybody else is going in the correct direction. Right. The reason being, to the extent that that is true, that is self-imposed, because you're embodying the notion that the things that are part and parcel a representation of Black culture are actually positive, because you got other Black folk like Nicole Hannah Jones who are telling you as much, and you are shooting yourself in the foot by adhering to things that are actually working to your detriment. So there are a lot of Black folk that are swimming against the current, but it's not racial, it's cultural, because of the things that Black folks do. Too many of them, not all, but most, like Jesse Lee say, but no. So yeah, there are some Black folks swimming against it, but they're doing that on their own. You're doing that. You're making the choice to swim against the current. You want to be a fool. You want to act dumb and go out and do things that you shouldn't be doing. And then when you are told, or when someone attempts to correct you, then the coon sala, whatever, or perhaps it's just white supremacy or whatever sort of a charge they want to levy. So therein lies the problem, because Black folks have been made to feel comfortable in this kind of ethnic cultural enclave that they've created for themselves, and it is working to their detriment. So it's self-imposed. It's not systemic. It's not being imposed on them by whites. White folks want black folks to get in line. I guarantee you, you know, because they're sick and tired of having to wonder, you know. Let come here, Keisha. Let's Keisha Blanche. Let me tell y'all. So white folks that's listening, that's going to see this, trust me when I tell you, y'all. We just like y'all. When I say we just like y'all, we come into an establishment, we go somewhere, we see it's a lot of black folk in there. We like, oh man. These things, man. Dang, I hope they don't get to tripping. Right? That's how we are. Am I lying, Blanche? Am I lying?
That's how it is. People don't want to tell the truth, but that is how it is.
Listen, there's a restaurant near my house that just opened up. It's a nice little restaurant. It's like a barbecue joint. They got the axe throwing in there. It's like a nice little place or whatever, you know, and you know, all white crowd. It may have been one or two black folks in there. Maybe. I think me and my wife may have been the only black people in there. And we standing there, we was getting some carry out this night. It's a nice new restaurant. And we saying to ourselves, man, I hope the black folk don't figure out this place out here. Y'all know how it is, y'all. Y'all know black, when we find our little spot somewhere out in the suburbs where we can hang and chill and we feel like it's safe, we always be like, man, I hope the niggas don't find out about this place. And I know white folk, I know y'all try to run or try to get away from us, because I'll try to get away from us. But eventually, y'all know y'all can't hide, right? We gonna find it. And then the place just gonna get blacker and blacker and blacker. And then it's just the stage just gonna go downhill, because we gonna find y'all wherever y'all at. We gonna find y'all. And then soon we walk up in there and it's kind of like a 50-50 split. It's like blacks and whites. We like, oh man, the niggas done found it, y'all. That's how we are.
But Michelle Obama said that that was like white flight, you know, when black people start moving in, white people start moving out.
I don't know what you call it. Maybe I'm an Oreo, a coconut, a coon, and everything. So maybe that's me. But I know I be saying to myself, like, man, damn, here come these niggas. As soon as I'm telling y'all, as soon as I see old,
I mean, there are, you know, it's. I think every culture has this, because you got black people and then you got. And then you know, and then you have white folks, and then you have white, you know, and then you have, I mean, everybody has their little, you know, they're like subsect of themselves. They're like, oh, we don't associate with those folks. You know, I mean, everybody has that, you know, it's not, but for some reason, when black people, I just, you know, and people can say what you want to say. People can come in the comments after you watch this. You can say what you want to say, but y'all know, black, you say the same thing. It's just like Colin Kaepernick when his mom was questioning them doggone cornrows. My parents would have said the exact same thing. Cornrows, what you think you're doing? What? No, we're not doing that. You think my mother has literally said this. I'm not raising gangsters. Like, if we came home, we was trying to do something cool and new and whatever. No, we couldn't listen to certain type of music. We could not listen to we couldn't wear certain type of clothes. We couldn't, because there was a certain standard that your parents wanted you to maintain if your parents actually cared about what you were doing. And so everybody knows this. I don't know why people try to act like, you know, it doesn't exist, but it does. Go ahead, Blanche. Let him have it.
Go ahead, Blanche. You got something to say? Because I was going to go ahead, Blanche.
To me, here goes the difference, right? Every group has a subculture or subset of people in their particular race. But the problem is that black people's subculture is representation of black people.
That's right.
They get put in the movies, the TVs, the music, like, so they get the spotlight. And to me, that's the problem, because it makes it more enticing to be than the regular person. And listen, and everybody knows this.
Right.
Steph Curry and his wife, wherever they were staying in the Bay Area, they had plans to put that little housing, low income housing, behind them where they live, and they said no, because they know what's going to come with that low income housing. Not the kings and the queens and the guys and the goddesses. You know what's coming with the low income housing. And black people are very disingenuous when they get on TV. These same black people are not around like us. Like, we actually got to intermingle with these people. They don't. Like they get to avoid them at all costs. We actually gotta go to where they are. They in our family, they in our community, at the park, they in the mall, and these people, they everywhere, so we can't escape them. But yet they're telling you how bad they have it, and we like, nah, they ain't got it bad. They terrorizing us.
Blanche, what about when we met each other in person and we went to that restaurant? We were
Keisha,
I was looking around like,
Keisha, what did we see in that restaurant? What did we see in that restaurant?
Blanche had you up in the hood, Keisha.
He had me listen.
Keisha, what did we see in that restaurant though? What we see in there? We saw diabetes, cholesterol, mass.
Listen, y'all, listen. This was so crazy. I think everybody, but Blanche and I, maybe one other person did not have on a mask. If I remember correctly,
right.
It is 2023. It was hot. Everybody had on a mask. Like, to me, that speaks to a psychosis. Like, something is wrong. Like, what are you watching? What are you doing? What are you thinking to have on a mask? It breaks my heart. Like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. But
400 pounds with a mask on. You might well take the mask off.
Right.
What the mask on do? You 400. This is a wrap.
And then you're ordering, like, the food that you're even ordering is not like, if the disease, the COVID, if it's gonna get you, and these are the things it targets obese people. You eating your smothered pork chop. That's not good. That's not gonna help. Like, your mask, that's not that. Them two things don't go together, boo. Like, it's not going together. It's just it's just wild. It's wild.
I wanna address something Wrinkle Brain said in the chat. They put a scripture up here. Blanche may be able to speak to it also, and that's Thessalonians 3:10. It says that we should swim against the current. And what Wrinkle Brain means, I'm assuming, is that, in this context, I don't know, I'm not familiar with that particular portion of the Bible, but within this context, I would say, or I will say, that when I think of swimming against the current, this is, me, Chad, Blanche, Keisha, we are swimming against the current. We're trying to swim against the current of what is acceptable Black behavior, or Black culture. That's the whole point of us trying to, so when Nicole Hannah Jones is saying that, she's not saying it like, well, maybe in her mind she thinks that Black folks are righteous for trying to sort of buck against the system, but to understand it more correctly, yes, we should swim against the current, meaning that we shouldn't do what the world, or what the destructive aspects of the culture is telling us is okay to sort of engage in. So we
know Nicole Hannah Jones. She's biracial, right?
Of course, come on. They all of them.
And I don't have a problem with that. I'm just saying, for her to be so. Wait, where's the camera? She's biracial.
The wokest Negro is the one that got a white parent. That's gonna be the wokest you gonna find. Is if they got a white parent, they about to go extra hard.
Right. Oh, Colin Kaepernick is too, by the way.
Yeah.
How many people was on that panel? How long were they talking, man? It was like 20 people up there.
Yeah, it was a bit, but we're gonna watch another little clip. So let's watch this.
Structural oppression is called oppression.
This is a trip. Oh wait, hold on. Wait a minute.
why you find that, Keisha? Like, my question is though, like, I guess I'll throw it to Blanche since Keisha focused on finding a clip. Like, I don't know, I don't even understand why black folks think that they have some kind of right or green light to just swim against the current. Like for what? Don't you realize? I mean, you have to you have to live and exist within, the context that you were born. I just don't understand why these folks think that there's some kind of, they have a duty to be, to be rebellious,
Disruptive,
to be disruptive. I don't understand that. I mean, I understand it, but I mean it rhetorically.
I mean, you said it one time when you said they almost feel like if I'm a part of the system, then I'm like, they almost try to not be a part of the system at all. Like, they try to just stay away from anything that resembles, I guess, being like white people. But this scripture, this is the wrong scripture. He said, 2 Thessalonians 3:10 is, for even when we were with you, this we commanded you, that if any would not work, neither should he eat. That ain't, I don't know what that's the wrong scripture that he said in the chat.
Thessalonians 3:10. Second Thessalonians.
Yeah, that's what I'm on right now. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but I said that sounds like the one rebuking socialism. I hear that quoted a lot, cited a lot. But yeah.
But yeah, but again, this another thing is that when they're speaking about black people, they always speak about black folks with the moral high ground.
Right.
As if black people are always in the right. When a black person is upset, it's always justified. If a black person is fighting, it's for a just cause. And I'm like, that's absolute and utter nonsense. I would venture to say that 99% of the time when black folks are upset about racism, it's not racism.
Right.
They're upset about their propaganda of racism or propaganda of this stuff or the narrative, but they're actually upset with actually what's taking place. Even with the guy, Jordan Neely, or even with the young lady with the bike. Like, she proved that she paid for the bike, and folks don't even it don't even matter. Like, so what? She paid for the bike twice, they don't even care. Like, so what? Give them the bike,
Right.
You took every bike from a black man. I remember when I was coming up, if you had a bike, the white people will come by and take the bike from you and make you walk. And then black folks just be believing that. Lying.
All right, listen to this. Let's see here.
I have a question for Manuel about, he said something that I sort of don't really understand. He said something to the effect that white people as a group have always had power. And there's plenty of white people, and yes, true, white people are in power, right? For the most part, and built this country on the back of slaves and those things. The history, I understand it very well. But not all white people have power. There's plenty of poor working class white people. But I think that when we group all of white people together, and we don't recognize the fact that there's a lot of white people that struggle, and it's a different struggle, as you mentioned, because they're not swimming upstream, let's call it, right? And they are more swimming with the stream. It doesn't mean that people don't struggle. Mm-hmm. And so I think that words are important. And I think that if we're gonna come together and really attack racism and the inequities that are in this country and they're in this world, it's important not to group all white people, right? So, and I don't know how we do that, and maybe I'm being too particular about your language, but I think it's an important point that not all white people are empowered. Not all white people have the chance to be children of doctors and grow up the way you grew up, and the way I grew up, with privilege and things that I have. So yes, I am someone that is, do you understand my point?
I love that. May I, Oprah?
Go ahead. This is your show. Go ahead. This is your show to answer the questions. But what I was going to say, and then I'll let you answer it. White people, there are white people who are not as powerful as the system of white people, the caste system that's been put in place, but they still, no matter where they are on the rung or the ladder of success, they still have their whiteness.
And I agree with you that that white person has more of an advantage than that black person does. But it's not to say that that person has power, right? And it's not to remember the fact that there aren't plenty of working poor people, white working poor in America that don't have power too. Yeah, Seth, I'll say it like this. Yes, it is. You can never generalize in life, in general, right? You can never generalize. Now, when I'm saying white people, I am speaking of the proverbial white people. I'm not saying like you, white person. I am saying proverbially, historically, white people have had power. But think about this, because I got a lot of backlash when I brought up white privilege. Because some people are like, wait a second, I'm a poor white person. Your parents were doctors. How can you say I'm privileged? White privilege isn't saying your life hasn't been hard. White privilege is just saying your skin color, it hasn't attributed to the difficulty of your life.
Keisha, is that my breaking point?
Well,
I was at my breaking point. I can only take about 20 more seconds of that.
Go ahead, Chuck.
Man, I don't know what that white guy's, what his political persuasion is or whatever. I'm upset because I oftentimes hear conservatives speak this way. Particularly, white conservatives, and perhaps some black ones too. But this hedging, this sort of giving the left the benefit of the doubt when it comes to a lot of the things that they say. And I knew that Oprah and my man was going to respond with something completely and utterly ridiculous, just completely and utterly, even though he tried to be as sensible as he possibly could and meet them in the middle. They were not having it. I don't even know why people think that they can give these lunatics any quarter whatsoever. Just tell them exactly how it is and tell them exactly what they are to their faces. I'm going to go back to a huge intellectual influence on me, and that is once again David Horowitz, who seems to be the only one of the very few living conservatives that actually gets it and actually understands, maybe because of David Horowitz's background. He grew up a red diaper baby. Okay, he was connected with all the radicals and the SDS and with the underground and the Black Panther Party and so on and so forth. So he knows the mind of the left almost better than any living human being in the United States right now. And he says it constantly. Conservatives are simply too damn nice. They're too damn nice and they too dang on polite. And they don't tell these people who they are and call them out directly to their faces. Oprah is a bigot and a racist. The big dude with the tight shirt on, the butt, he's a bigot and a racist. This is complete and utter foolishness and ridiculousness. When he talks about, I'm not talking about individual people, I'm talking about the proverbial white man as a symbol. What the hell does that mean? What are you even talking about? Because when you start talking about society and politics and everything else, you're talking about real life, flesh and blood human beings existing in a real world. You're not. This is reality. You're not. This is the problem. The left has a ton of love for humanity, but they do not love human beings. The reality is that humanity is the problem. Individual human beings are redeemable. Wow. You know what I mean? But humanity is awful, which is why individual human beings need salvation. He's sitting up here talking, and the white guy. Oh man, white people haven't always had power. I mean, what exactly are you talking about? I mean, we know that Western Europe was under the yoke of the Roman Empire, for example. They were virtually slaves, and then when you fast forward to, say, for example, the late 19th, early 20th century, the Catholic Italian was considered to be of Alpine European stock and was considered lesser than in comparison to the Nordic European. But once upon a time, the Nordic European was below within the social strata to the Italian European. And so things sort of change over time. This is just pretty much just blows a hole into the bogus pseudoscience that was eugenics in the first place. Was white people at the top when the Iberian Peninsula, parts of France, parts of Italy and Greece and all of Spain was conquered by Arab-speaking Muslims that we call Moors today. I mean, give me a break. Or how about when, you know, when the Black Death, as they called it, or I think it was called Lamert Blue at one point, because before the boils would come to the surface on the skin, they would leave blue bruises. So before it became known as the Black Death, it was the Blue Death, which of course is the bubonic plague. The bubonic plague came to Europe from Asia, which nearly wiped out almost a third of the entire continent. This is what prepared Europeans in terms of their immune system for their sojourn across the Atlantic. And when they met the Native Americans didn't have, you know, the immune system that the Europeans had, because the Europeans, but prior to the Native Americans sort of succumbing to the same fate, the Europeans succumbed to the same fate, but they succumbed to the same fate of so-called biological warfare, or what they called plague-infected blankets. This myth that the white settlers gave Native Americans plague or you know, infected blankets. Europeans would succumb to the same fate by the Asians that, you know, brought you know, these rats along the trading ships that had fleas that brought the bubonic plague into Europe. So all this nonsense about whites have always had power, I don't know what that even means. When and where do you draw the line between this and that? I have no idea. This idea that the United States wealth was built on the backs of slaves. The wealth of a country is signified by its GDP, its gross domestic product. It's what you produce. It's the individuals within the society that produce. Human beings have wealth. The country doesn't have wealth necessarily, to the extent that, you know, I guess we're not talking about what they confiscate vis-a-vis taxes and what have you. But it's
still from the individuals.
Yeah, but it's still from the individuals.
The citizens.
The citizens are the ones that produce the wealth. He's talking about that wealth was built on the backs of slaves. That's not true at all.
No.
I would never say something like that to Nicole Hannah Jones or Ibram X. Kendi or anybody. Oh, I get it. I understand that. But no. I'm not giving you that much. This straw man of the proverbial white man that they use to try and soak up more and more power to bring those, you know, up under the boot of, you know, of their, you know, iron-fisted, no, I'm not having it, man. I'm not having it. Again, they want to try and obstruct and obscure their own racism, right? By sort of projecting and being intoxicated on their own sense of moral virtue and righteousness in order to hide and obstruct their own bigotry. Man, still, he doesn't, man.
Jeff, you can go on. Blanche, go. I just want to, before you go, we're going to take questions at 9:30. So if you have a question, please at Angel Wings, and then so whatever she reposts in the chat, we'll take up those questions. Go ahead, Blanche. Go off.
Oprah should be ashamed of herself. When Oprah came on the scene to get her show, Oprah was 400 pounds with a Jerry curl. Now, clearly, America can't be that rate. I'm going to show y'all a picture of Oprah. Look at Oprah. Oprah was 400 pounds, looking like rerun from What's Happening. Oprah was 400 pounds, and these white people said we want to give her own show. Clearly, there wasn't no racism. I want y'all to see this. 400 pounds Oprah looking like the old Al Sharpton with an afro. So again, Oprah has some nerve talking about America's racist. If that was the case, she would have never gotten a show. And if that was the case, her show, think about it. Oprah was a black woman. They had the #1 talk show in the country for years, and her audience was white women. How do you explain white women wanting to tune in every day to watch a black woman talk on TV? If America is so racist, not only would she have never had the show, but they wouldn't even watched it. So why did all these white women love Oprah if America is so systemically racist? It doesn't make any sense. But I'm going to the point that when Oprah started, she was 400 pounds with a Jerry curl, and they said we want her to have a show. Now, maybe they'll have reminiscent of Aunt Jemima and Big Mama and them. I don't know. But they said they wanted Oprah to have the show. And I'm just saying, this caste system
Yeah, that was it too. They use the term caste
This
system.
caste system, if it's truly a caste system, think about this.
You
If
can't
it's
get out of
truly,
it.
you wouldn't be able to get out.
You can't get out of a caste.
You
That's
can't
right.
get out of the caste system.
You can't get out.
What's a caste system,
To,
Blanche?
to just throw that word around, to throw the term caste system around so loosely like that, I mean, it's just disingenuous. Doesn't even describe it. But go ahead, Blanche.
So basically, like with a caste system, you're born into a certain sect of the population. So it doesn't matter what you do, that's where you are. So you could be at the Brahmins at the top, you can be all the way to the bottom, but in either way, it's like 4 different classes. But whatever you're born in, that's your class. It ain't no, I'm gonna fight for my rights and get out, I'm a protest, I'm in affirmative back. No, that's your, and guess what? Everybody accepts it. Like everybody accepts this is my caste. That's your, like people accept it. So again, when she said caste system, I'm like, why do people so disingenuous? There's no caste system in America. You crazy?
Right. And to piggyback off what Blanche said, he used India as an example. And it just sort of again goes to show you that the mythology is a huge centerpiece of culture. And so when you're talking about India, the reason why they place such a huge emphasis on what quote unquote class you're born into is because fundamentally the Hindu religion teaches and preaches the doctrine of reincarnation. So if you were born into, like Blanche just talked about, the classes, we have the Brahmins here, and at the lowest of the low, I believe, is the caste class known as the untouchables. And so if you were born an untouchable, then according to their their mythology, which is the resting place of their culture, they believe that you are being punished for something that you did in a previous life. And so you being born an untouchable and not being able to get out is justified because you're being punished. Vishnu, Shiva, or Krishna, or whoever is punishing you for what you did in a previous life. And when they tell you that the untouchables they are literally, they call them that for a reason. They are quite literally the scum of this. You can't touch them. Wow. Literally, quite literally, they are the lowest of the low, and there's nothing you can do to get out of it. So to say that, to apply the term caste system and talking about American society, Oprah, Harpo, out of man.
Okay, let it's my turn. Let me let me get this off my chest. First of all, I am offended anytime I hear a white person talk about they have white privilege, meaning if you put that qualifier of white in front of privilege, meaning that you have some privilege above me because I'm black, I'm automatically offended. Okay, let me just say that from the jump. That's why I hate critical race theory. I hate any type of theory that says that just by you being you got less melanin, because let's be clear, everybody has melanin unless you're an albino. So because you have less melanin, you're automatically better than me. You got me all the way messed up because my father is the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And honey, let me tell you one thing. He told me who I am, and you and nobody else can take that from me. Okay, let's get that clear. Christians in particular should be appalled at anybody who tries to say that they do not have what God says that they have. And the fact that a lot of Christians will sit back and let this stuff rock and ride and not stand up and say something is appalling to me. I was sitting in conversations yesterday where so-called Christians were talking about how, well, we really shouldn't say stuff like that because the media is going to do this. We really shouldn't do that because the media is going to do that. I don't get, I thought you said you were a child of the king. If you're a child, do you understand what a kingdom is? Do you understand what being a child of the king is? When you are a child of the king, you come and go as you please, and nobody better not say anything to you. That's how I live my life. I don't walk around up and through here thinking about what some media person is going to say, what somebody's going to do, what somebody may say, because I am a child of the King, and what my Father says goes. So I don't know about all of these other people up and through here, but if you claim to be a child of the King, you better walk. Greg said this over a year ago, I believe. He said on one of his lives, this is before we even knew each other, this is when I was like stalking his page. He said, when the Bible said, have dominion and subdue the earth, he said, I was paying attention. He said, I took that seriously. I take that seriously. He said, oh, so everything up and through here belongs to me. Okay? That's what time I'm on. All right. So I don't want to hear nobody who claims the name of Christ talking about somebody has some type of privilege over them simply because of your skin color. That's all you got. Your skin color gives you privilege. You got me all the way messed up. I could go on and on.
No, Keisha, though. No, and seriously though, man. Look, you know, and just to kind of just get real for a second, man. And when you hear,
with my church fan, because I'm
right. and I know you guys recognize this in the chat as well. To be serious, y'all joke. I mean, we're not joking, but you know, but to kind of ground it for a second, just because I want to make another point. When you hear this sort of talk, you know, and how commonplace this sort of stuff has become. I remember the one clip went viral. Blanche played it. I don't know if it was a YouTube show or perhaps he just did a quick IG live when he played and again this went viral. I guess, you know, a lot of people saw it, were talking about it. And that was, you know, the one old black guy with I think he had dreadlocks or whatever. He was standing there. He had his little makeshift Africa hookup on, and he was sitting there talking about what did he say? I can't remember. Blanche. He said, he sees no other way but to kill white people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have to kill white people. I remember having a conversation with a homeboy of mine, and we were just talking how we do, talking about a lot of things that we're talking about here. And I said to him, I said, bro, at the end of the day, man, just say, for example, say I'm wrong, right? And everything they say about white people and white supremacy in the system and so on and so forth, say it's true, right? It's true. I said, so with that being said, we weren't debating or anything like that. I was just kind of posing a hypothetical to him. And I said, so if it's true, with that being said, what do you suppose I do? Do you suppose I gather up as many white people as I can find, line them up against the wall and have them executed and kill them?
Wow.
And I told him, I said, bro, I don't have the heart to do that. So white folks can be as evil and wicked and cruel and as corrupt as they want to be. But I know I have to abide by a certain code because I am commanded, right? Because, the Most High tells me so, because they got the answer for their sins when they meet their maker the same way I got the answer for mine. I'm not putting what you want me to do? You want me to kill them? And so that's why I'm bringing this up to say this kind of talk, this kind of rhetoric, all this stuff, but we're not talking about any white, we're talking about whiteness. We're talking about the proverbial white man or the proverbial white woman, this, that, and the third. This is the kind of talk. You look at what happened in Rwanda in 1994. This is the sort of talk. You look at what happened to, non-Aryan folk during, Hitler's purge and what have you, or any sort of similar situation where you saw these kinds of genocides. This is what leads to genocide. I know a lot of people say, man, the United States could have never happened. And I get it because, our Bill of Rights, a lot of folks, are protected, right? If you know what I mean. But don't think for a second, given how popular it has become to say these kinds of things about one particular subset of the American people, not even a subset, but the majority of the American people, which so happen to be white. Believe me, if these people could have it their way, some of them would gladly start ushering white people out to the gallows simply on the basis of their skin color. This is the kind of reckless talk that quite literally leads to genocide. Because what you must do first is destroy the symbol that is a person, to destroy the symbol that is a people. You degrade them, you denigrate them, you talk down to them, you dehumanize them, make black folk, turn white people into a kind of non-thing, right? Because they no longer have humanity. Blanche said it before. Blanche said, when you take white people and you do not even make an attempt to give motive to their actions, right? Except, racism. If racism, every time a white person does something to a black person that you don't like and you say is racist, and you don't give them the benefit of the doubt by trying to figure out exactly what took place from moment to moment, from situation to situation, you are telling white people that they are human. You're telling them that they don't have the right to be human. Maybe it wasn't racism. Maybe the white person is just mean, or they're just rude, or maybe the other person who's a so-called victim, maybe they were just rude or inconsiderate, or road rage because somebody cut you off in traffic, somebody do this, somebody do that. You don't know. But every time a white person does something that you don't like, it's not because of racism. But when you say that, you are taking away their humanity. And when they are no longer human, then they quite literally become expendable. Yeah. I don't think for a second
That's
that we
why
live.
They call it like whiteness and blackness. Like you're removing the humanity from the people. Because when you just say whiteness and blackness, it's like I am more than just my skin color. They are more than just their skin color. Like, it's dehumanized.
That's why I say what I say. Don't think that it can't come to a pass, because if you look at Germany. I love, this is one of the things that really, really, led to Jordan Peterson's popularity. Of course, when he made a huge fuss about the pronoun law, I forgot what it was called, yeah. And in Canada, and he went viral because he was standing up to these insane students, and he was standing in that circle or whatever, and then Jordan Peterson went viral, and then from that point people started to dig into who he actually was, because he had already had material online because he would record his lectures in class, and one of Jordan Peterson's most popular lectures was the lectures that he gives on Nazism, when he said the scariest thing about Nazi Germany is the fact that the people who helped carry out what happened in Nazi Germany were regular human beings. So the question that Jordan Peterson poses, being a psychologist, is what are the psychological factors that led or could lead a person to participate in such atrocities? Because the people who participated in those atrocities were the same kinds of human beings that you and I are. So what Jordan Peterson is trying to get people to understand is there are certain things that you have to learn and know and understand about yourself so that you can protect yourself from those impulses, because as human beings, we all have them. So when you keep hearing this talk about white people and white this and white privilege and this and this and that and this and that, they are triggering that reptilian impulse in your brain to then one day think that it is summarily okay to just engage in a quite literally an extermination of the white race. It sounds preposterous, but it's not.
There was a guy who was either he was arrested or convicted. I think this has happened several times this year, where a black man was convicted or at least arrested for killing specifically white people. Like, it's happening because they were white. So it's not even just like in America. Like, this thing, these people are, that's why the psychosis is a real thing, because they keep pumping it into the system and people are believing it. It is making them crazy.
Yes, right.
It's making them see things that aren't there. They're hallucinating. This thing is becoming a hallucination. This is schizophrenia. When you hear voices and you have hallucinations, and you're in a delusion, now you're in full-on schizophrenia. They're creating mental illnesses.
Yep. Blanche got these couple IG lives on his page. I suggest y'all go check him out. He called white privilege. No, what do you call it? What would you call them, Blanche? Okay, you got a couple IG talks on your page where you was talking about pretty much, man, like the only people that are allowed to be, discriminated against, in all actuality, are white people, because the system, the media, they let this stuff occur. They allow this stuff to happen. They green light this stuff. You literally hear people say some of the most atrocious, obnoxious, disgusting things, on MSNBC, CNN, cartoons, movies, etc.
Well, you know what's crazy is that, and I really saw this with the Kyle Rittenhouse case, where, I mean, it's a self-defense. I'm like, it's a self-defense case, but everybody wanted to see him burn. And I'm like, how are y'all bypassing all this stuff, even to the point where they're even defending a child molester? Like, how are y'all bypassing? But guess what? It didn't matter. It's because, and the guy, I forgot his name, but in the clip, he's on one of those sports shows, the host was with Oprah. He even said it. I'm not talking about white people per se. I'm not talking about you as a white person. I'm talking about whiteness. Like even he's even what he's really saying is that I'm going to lump you in a group, but when I'm talking to you, you're an individual. But as soon as you leave my presence, you're a part of the whiteness. And so, and I mentioned dehumanizing, because what they're telling white people is, if you get out of line for any reason, it's because you're racist.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're racist, then you are the cause of all of the destruction in the world. So that's going to justify persecuting them, stringing them up, lynching them. Like everything that black folks said white folks did, I'm telling you now, there could be a future where you see white people being hunted down and persecuted, and then we're going to be the ones like the abolitionists for the white people. We're going to be like the ones
right.
Like, y'all, it's not true.
We're going to have the Underground Railroad.
The Underground Railroad for white people. Right. We have all that. Come on. All that stuff.
Lance, you're going to have to grow out your hair and put maps in your brains.
Help the white folks get free. We're going to try to free y'all.
Free the white people, man.
Oh, my God. This is so infuriating to me. And to think that Oprah Winfrey is a billionaire. To think that she would come out of her mouth and say something like this, like, woman, you literally are a billionaire. I'm pretty sure that white people gave you they gave you the opportunity. So where do you even, like, how come she wasn't on there correcting them? Like, she should have been on there correcting them, like, wait a minute now. I can't rock with this because, I have had experiences with many white folks, and it's, I haven't had this. Instead, she was co-signing it. And I don't want to just we're going to, I wanted to, somebody has, there were some questions throughout. I haven't been as active in the chat, but I want to just take a moment to say thank you, everybody who gave a super chat or a sticker and all of those things. Thank you so much. And the chat has been lit today. I haven't been active because I'm trying to stay focused, but, I did see one question for Chuck. What is a red diaper baby?
Oh yeah, so I answered that in the chat. So a red diaper baby is yeah. So, but I'll answer just in case someone may have missed it. I use the term red diaper baby to describe David Horowitz earlier in the show. And a red diaper baby is someone who was raised by parents who were members of the Communist Party. Red diaper babies, back in like the 30s, 40s, this was sort of like the era of the red diaper baby. You had a lot of European immigrants coming over from various parts of Eastern Europe, Russia, and what have you, especially when Hitler began his purge. And there were also pogroms in Russia as well. It's funny the way the left, they know that they are a Marxist communist. It's easy to kind of draw the connection between the modern left and communism, but they try to sidestep the fascist label because, of course, they're not racist. Hitler's war machine was predicated upon race, while the Soviet war machine was predicated upon something totally different. Wink, wink. Although there were pogroms in Russia as well. The Russian Jews were also persecuted systemically, and we know this. Part of the reason why we know, believe it or not, is the interesting story of the life of one of the most famous communists in world history, that being Leon Trotsky. Leon Trotsky was an ethnic Jew. He was arrested and exiled and sent to Siberia for his subversive activities. And, he managed to, and it was funny because, he learned or he was radicalized by his future wife. He was only about 19 years old. I think his wife was about 6-7 years his senior. Her name was Alexandra. I can't remember Leon Trotsky's wife's name, but her name was Alexandra something or another. And she's the one who radicalized him. And they were both exiled in Siberia together. And he managed to escape by hiding within a horse and carriage that was, I guess, carrying a shipment of hay. And he hid underneath the hay for about 400 miles. And then when he reached Siberia's border, he presented the border, I guess, agents or guards there with the phony identification card that he had stolen from his captor, from his jailer. And his jailer's name was Trotsky. And that's the name he went by ever since. But Leon Trotsky's born name was Lev Bronstein. And, it's funny because, there's, of course, the famous dekulakification campaign that Joseph Stalin engaged in against the Ukrainian people to try and collectivize their farms. But Lev Bronstein, would later on to become Leon Trotsky, was the son of a kulak. Ironically, he grew up fairly privileged due to, his father's wealth as a landowner and small farmer.
They always be privileged.
Yeah, they're always privileged. But part of Leon Trotsky's upbringing, his father, being Jewish, they were and they had to sort of hide, and it's a whole story. I don't want to get into the whole life story of Leon Trotsky, but his father, Leon Trotsky, just like Marx and just like many other communists, the whole theory of Marxism is sort of used to give purpose to man's life. When God is removed, then what becomes man's purpose? Leon Trotsky, like Karl Marx, renounced his belief in God and became an atheist. Matter of fact, it was his father that renounced the Jewish faith and became an atheist and passed on his atheism, so to speak, to his son. So you had, anti-Jewish fervor in Russia as well. But going back to the whole issue of the red diaper baby, you had these Europeans that were coming over, many of them Jewish, because they were fleeing from Russian persecution. They were fleeing from German persecution. Just like, we talk about the Frankfurt School, all of, the Jewish scholars that came from Germany. They were fleeing from Hitler's war machine. And so, immigrants coming into the United States would famously settle, within New York City and various parts of America's East Coast. And they situated themselves in these ethnic enclaves. And, communism sort of became the thing that kind of kept these small communities of newly arrived immigrants. It sort of kept them together. And the doctrine of communism was how they sort of dealt with what they perceived to be a hostile world on the outside. And so a lot of these young Jewish men and women in the 1930s and 1940s were raised by parents who were members of the Communist Party, and they took their radicalism into their adulthood. And so y'all know me, but I got to give y'all a long answer. History. But yeah, so there was a lot of anti-Semitism going on in Europe, and they brought that to the United States during that great migratory surge that happened in the United States in the early 20th century. So.
All right. So we do have a question. It says, has there ever been a country that was able to avoid the push toward socialist communism.
Yeah.
What did the country do to escape their grasp? We'll see. Blanche, do you have any insight on that? And then after that, I'll put my 2 cents, and then Chuck will come back to you.
I mean, I don't think America's communist, socialist. I mean, I can't speak to nobody else, but I mean, maybe Australia is not. I mean, maybe I don't, but I would say America's not. I don't, yeah, I don't really know who escaped it. I know, I guess some countries ended up being not communist and becoming communist and socialist, and it didn't work out. Most of them, it was bad, but I don't know. I say America. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I would say America, but as you can see, the push is still there. Like, people are still trying to push. I had this revelation over the weekend that I will share with you. I've been like digging into the Bible and about the kingdom, because Jesus talks more than salvation, more than Jesus talked a lot about the kingdom. He said, I came to bring the kingdom, right? I'm like, my spiritual father, he pretty much gave me the foundations, right? But we didn't dig a lot into the kingdom. And so I've been hearing this thing, like, I feel like God is trying to teach me something right now. And I pay when God is dumping jewels on me, I pay attention, because I know he's trying to show me something. And so I had this revelation. So I had to speak yesterday, and I'm in the bathroom, and I'm like getting dressed, and I'm listening to pastors and like biblical commentary about the kingdom. And I had this revelation. I'm like, communists, they're all about the government, right? Having control. And then I had this revelation where, God bringing the kingdom is a government. It is God's government. He wants his government to be instituted in the earth, right? And so I'm like, the communists are not all wrong. They just got the wrong kingdom.
Yeah. Right.
Because I think we have it's like, why do people want this? Because God says that his word is written on our heart, that he breathed it into us, his breath of life, and then man became a living soul. And it's like, God, in his humanity, he made man in his image in the earth and breathed himself into humanity, right? And so he is extending himself in the earth. And so I'm like thinking about this, and I'm like, and then here comes Jesus, who is talked about from the very beginning up until, he comes physically in the earth. He's like, he talks about this kingdom. I'm here to bring the kingdom. I'm here to establish a kingdom. The kingdom is within you. He's like, kingdom, 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 kingdom. And I'm like, why are so many people kind of like drawn to this kingdom thing? And I'm like, oh my gosh, because I think we have a natural want to get back to this kingdom, but we don't want the earthly kingdom. The earthly kingdom is corrupt. It is, the best thing we got is this republic. This is the best system that man has come up with, that actually, that somehow kind of sort of works. But the kingdom that we're all searching for is the kingdom of God. And so I don't know, I just had this crazy revelation. I was like, so we do actually are drawn. I can see how we are drawn towards, a king. We're drawn towards that leader, that king. But y'all, the king is Christ. It's not the government. That ain't the king you want. That ain't the king you want, boo. You don't want a communist government. You don't want that king. You don't want that government setup. It is the opposite of what God comes to bring. And so I think the socialist communist thing that people are always pushing towards is real. That's the enemy's version. It's the enemy's perversion, rather, of God's perfect kingdom. So I don't know, just a little biblical rant there, a little revelation that I have. But go ahead, Chuck.
Well, you talked about God and and everything. I just want to give folks something to look up. I won't get into the details. I know you probably like, damn, Chuck, just go ahead and break it down. But I want you guys to look up. Some of you are probably familiar with it when we're talking about the spread of communism. We got some sharp folk. We got the smartest chat on social media.
That's right.
But guys, look up the miracle at Fatima. The miracle at Fatima. Fatima. Happened in Portugal, where it's also regarded as the miracle of the sun. And this is believed to be the prophecy, the moment where the coming forth of a totalitarian empire would take over or attempt to take over the world and be the cause of all sorts of misery and mayhem. The miracle at Fatima was believed to be, an angel coming down and warning the people that a great nation was going to abandon God and become, totalitarian. And this would be, I knew Rick Hempstead would know our story of Our Lady of Fatima. You guys look that up. It's extremely, it'll give you chills. It'll give you shivers when you read it and you study the miracle at Fatima. But to go back to the question of, when socialism, communism has ever been, put down, or what have, let me remember exactly what what did the country do to escape their grasp? Quite frankly, one word, it's war. And it could be a cold war, it could be a hot war. When you see part of what the Soviet Russia, what their goal was, and they quite literally said this. If you read the Comintern papers, the Comintern archives that are now open to the public, you can go and read what they said at the Communist International, or shortly it's called the Comintern. In short, is where communist members and leaders from all over the world would come in to war game and to strategize. And, we had known, when I say we, I mean the United States had known that communists were looking to subvert and overthrow the United States from the beginning. They always had their eye on the United States, especially after World War II, when the United States really, I guess, officially from that point forward, sort of leapfrogged Great Britain as the world's economic and military power. The United States had to be defeated, right? Because its workers of the world unite. Communists envision a world where, there are no borders and there are no nations, right? And so when you saw the Bolsheviks take over the provisional government in Russia in 1917, that's when, communists all over the world had it in their minds that communism was right over the horizon if they could just implement the Bolsheviks' tactics of armed insurrection. Because Vladimir Lenin and his small group of or what he called his Red Army, led by Leon Trotsky, virtually took over Russia by themselves, and they exploited the tolerance, believe it or not, and the kindness of the provisional government that had taken over from Tsar Nicholas II. And it was Vladimir Lenin who was exiled in Munich, Germany for 17 years. During World War I, he was sent back into Russia by the German High Council to get Vladimir Lenin to sow dissension within this newly formed government. Because remember, that Russia was, against Germany, the Ottoman Empire, and the Austrian Empire during World War I. So Germany was playing this long game where it was like, okay, if we send Vladimir Lenin in, send him back in, then he'll cause all manner of mayhem and chaos, which is in fact, what he did until he eventually overthrew the provisional government and took it over. So from that point forward, they said, okay, we have to use our military to, and this is verbatim, to cause this sort of revolutionary terror so we can liberate the proletariat all over the world. Let our military force be the military of the proletariat. And so so from that point forward, everything became, about overthrowing as many governments as they can. And when you fast forward and you look at the end of World War II and the way everything was sort of carved out as a result of the negotiations that were put in place as a result of the Yalta Conference, the Soviets were allowed to take over a lot of infrastructure that had a lot of war and military infrastructure that had been abandoned by the Germans and by the Japanese. This is into World War II, and so they said, well, we're going to wage war on everybody we can get our hands on. And so when you look at South Korea was able to avoid communism. How did they avoid communism? They avoided communism with a war. A war that was backed by the United States and its United Nations allies. Same can be said about South Vietnam to a point, to a certain period of time, and it was taken over by communists. China was taken over by communists because, the United States and its United Nations allies, quite frankly, left the Chinese nationalist government. We abandoned them, quite frankly, and the Soviets, backing Mao Zedong, were able to completely take over China, and so on and so forth. And so if you have the communists who have it in their minds, and this is fundamental to their doctrine, is that, we are an imperial force that is seeking to take over the world in its entirety. When you get to that point, you have no recourse but to meet that kind of force with a counterforce. And that's when the whole, as we know, right, the Cold War began. And so that is how a lot of countries, and of course, the United States, we, put a lot of our funding and our resources into Western Europe to try to make sure that the Soviet Union did not advance beyond what would become known as the infamous Iron Curtain. So protect our Western allies and then kind of let the Soviets have everything else and try to keep communism out of the Western Hemisphere. But to put it quite literally, I mean, I know it sucks, and I know, nobody likes war, but when somebody shows up and they want to fight you and they want to conquer you, you have no other choice but to fight back or be conquered. There is no such thing. There's no way. There's no way out of it. You either fight back or you get conquered. And we're talking military, cultural subversion, you got to meet fire with fire. That's the only way.
I heard Alan West speak one day. This was years ago, and he was talking about, somebody said something about war and, why do we have to war and things like that. He said, and I'll always remember this. He said, there is some evil that the only thing you can do is to, you probably can't say this on YouTube, but it's to, that's the only thing you can do. Yeah. There is some evil that is just so bad.
Yeah.
And if you look at the Bible too, like, God has his limits. He's like, what, just the whole thing got to go. Everything got to go. Because it just gets so evil.
Yeah.
That it just has to go.
And it was, I want to say Finland. Finland, I know the Soviets tried to bring communism to Finland, and it was, due in large part to the United States and, again, our Western allies. We funded Finland's resistance to communism, and they were able to defeat the Soviets and push them out. Same thing with, say what you want to say about the Soviet Union and men like Zbigniew Brzezinski and what have you. But, the Afghans were able to fend off the Soviets and, what became known as the Soviet Union's Vietnam, because they got their behinds whipped by a ragtag bunch of Afghan Muslims in the late 1970s. So they were able to defeat communism, but they did it through armed resistance. And so, sometimes, man, you just got to fight, just like Finland, just like Afghanistan in the late 70s, just like South Korea did in the 1950s. Sometimes, like Keisha just said, sometimes there's something that is so evil that it's gonna force your hand. You know, you either fight it or you surrender.
And, you know, as we wrap up, I think that's what's happening in America. I think we are coming to a point where it's like, what are you going to let these people do? Because they have control of all the institutions. They're literally saying that your children need to be transgendered. I mean, who is going to lay down? I mean, there are some people who will lay down, but I mean, who's going to lay down to that? Not I. But I just want to say thank you so much to Angel Wings. As usual, every Sunday you show up and you do the dang on thing. We really appreciate it. We love you so much. Thank you to everybody in the chat. This is always a great conversation. Thank you to Chuck and Blanche, and shout out to our fearless leader, Chad, who is having fun at his daughter's birthday party. It's 10 o'clock. She's probably in the bed, like high on sugar and cake right now. But we love his whole family. And thank you guys so much. So do you guys have any last words for our show this evening?
You go ahead, Blanche.
I don't have any last words. I'm glad to be on the show. It was a great show.
Yeah. What does your shirt say this week, Blanche?
Spike protein.
All this is a Spike protein gang.
Oh, the gang. Okay.
Yeah, the gang.
Okay. Yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. We will see you next Sunday, 7:30. Set your clock. Now, we might be a little late, but we will be there. So just make sure you set your clock, Eastern Standard Time. We will see you next time.
And hold on, Keisha. Blanche, they said you cursed. That's why your camera wasn't working, man. Because you supposed to be something you supposed to be doing for some folk. They was talking trash about you in the comment section, saying that's why your camera wasn't working. Because that's right, a playlist, man. You promised people you was gonna make a playlist, and you ain't did it yet.
And I asked them how to make the playlist. They wouldn't tell me how to do it. How do I do it?
Oh.
I asked them how do I do it?
Bro, not between y'all, man.
They said you were supposed to Google it.
Oh, I gotta Google it. Okay, I'll Google it.
All right, everybody. We love you guys. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.